You have a plan for your real life. You know roughly what is in it, what you do in the mornings, who is there, the quality of the light. You have described it to people at parties. And if you are honest about the dates, it has been roughly the same plan for about 9 years. Nothing went wrong exactly. There was no disaster. You have been earning, learning, recovering, waiting for one specific thing to resolve. Every year had a reason in it, and every reason was true. And here you are, in a room with boxes you have moved 3 times and never opened, because you are not sure this is where you end up. What is actually happening is not what you have been told. It is not discipline, it is not clarity, it is not that you have not found your passion, or your purpose, or the right window. It is this: an unstarted life cannot fail. You have not been waiting to begin. You have been protecting something that only survives as long as it is never tested. Carl Jung had a name for this, and he did not invent it. He took it from a hymn. In the 4th book of Ovid's Metamorphoses, there is an invocation to Bacchus. The god is addressed directly by worshippers listing the things about him worth praising. One of the lines is this: "To puer aeternus, you are the eternal boy." Notice what that is. Not a diagnosis, not a complaint, a compliment, paid to a god in a hymn by people on their knees. The eternal boy is undiminished, never worn down, always at the beginning, and in the poem, he is the most beautiful thing in the high heaven. Jung took the phrase out of the hymn and gave it to a pattern he kept meeting in consulting rooms, not in children, in adults, in men of 30 and 35 and 40, who were still in some structural way at the beginning. Hold on to where the phrase came from, because it explains the problem in one move. A god can be eternally young because a god has no deadline. Eternal youth is only a gift if you are the kind of being that has forever. Take that same attribute, unspent potential, permanent beginning, nothing yet decided, and install it in a creature with a finite number of years, and it stops being a blessing. It becomes a bill. Jung's English colleague H.G. Baynes gave the lived version of it a name, and Marie-Louise von Franz, who wrote the definitive study, quotes him. She calls it a neurosis. The name is the provisional life. Her definition, exactly as she wrote it. The provisional life is the strange attitude and feeling that one is not yet in real life. And then the texture of it, which is the part that tends to land badly, because it is so specific. For the time being one is doing this or that, but whether it is a woman or a job, it is not yet what is really wanted, and there is always the fantasy that sometime in the future the real thing will come about. For the time being, everything you are currently doing is being done for the time being. Now the standard explanation for all of this is the mother, and I am setting that aside deliberately. Not because it is never true, because it is an account of where the pattern was installed, and not of what is running it today. You do not live in the house you grew up in. Something is keeping this powered right now in the present tense, in a life you are in charge of. That is what I want to look at. Von Franz says something about the puer that sounds like ordinary fear of commitment and is not. The one thing dreaded throughout, by such a type of man, is to be bound to anything whatever. And then this: there is a terrific fear of being pinned down, of entering space and time completely. Read that second phrase again, because it is strange, and the strangeness is the point. Entering space and time. Not fear of the wrong decision, not fear of failure. Fear of occupying coordinates. Because a person who has chosen is somewhere. A person who has not chosen is nowhere. And nowhere feels, from the inside, exactly like everywhere. 70 years earlier, a Danish writer described the machinery underneath that with more precision than anyone since. Søren Kierkegaard, in The Sickness Unto Death, has a section whose title reads like a lab report. The despair of possibility is due to the lack of necessity. And in it he writes this: possibility then appears to the self ever greater and greater. More and more things become possible because nothing becomes actual now. Read that backwards, because the causality runs opposite to the one you assume. You assume it goes, so many things feel possible, therefore I cannot choose. That is the story you have been telling. It is flattering, and it is wrong. He is saying the reverse. More things become possible because nothing becomes actual. The not choosing is producing the possibility. Your inaction is the factory. And that changes what kind of problem this is. You have pictured yourself as stalled, engine idling, waiting for a road. This is not stalled. It is accelerating in the wrong direction, and it has been all along. Here is the loop you do not choose. The unchosen self grows because nothing has happened to cut it down to size. Now every real available option has to be measured against a self that has grown another year and has never been tested. So the real option looks small, so choosing it feels like a demotion. So you do not choose. Every turn of that wheel makes the next turn harder. Which means the thing you thought you were doing, keeping your options open, protecting them, is not what has been happening. You are not saving your options, you are inflating them. Inflation is the exact word because it carries the bad news properly. In an inflation, the numbers go up and the value goes down at the same time. The more possible lives you hold, the less any single one is worth, and the total on the page looks bigger every year. So you feel enormous and broke at once, full of promise and unable to buy anything. Kierkegaard does not soften it. If possibility outruns necessity, he says, the self runs away from itself, so that it has no necessity, whereto it is bound to return. Nothing to come back to. And then the image that should end the argument. The mirror of possibility, he says, is a false mirror. And at the last, it is as if everything were possible, and this is precisely the last moment when the individual becomes for himself a mirage. Von Franz saw the same endpoint clinically. Alongside the provisional life, there is often a saviour complex or a messiah complex, with the secret thought that one day one will be able to save the world. And in its ordinary everyday form, she says, it shows up as the idea that one's time has not yet come. One's time has not yet come. The whole condition, in 6 words, and it has been sitting in your mouth for years. You have arguments, you have had them ready a long time, and they deserve to be taken seriously because they are not lies. They are all true, everyone, they are just not the reason. You will say you are keeping your options open, true, and an option has a carrying cost, nobody quotes you. You are paying rent on every door you have not closed, monthly, in attention and in fatigue, and you have never seen the invoice, so you have never counted it. You will say you are not ready. True, and readiness is manufactured by the thing itself. It is downstream, standing at the wrong end of a causal chain, waiting for it to run backwards, is not patience. It is a category error. You will say you are waiting for clarity. True, and this is the most respectable one, so it is the most expensive. Clarity is a report on what you have already done. Asking for it first is asking for the verdict before the trial. You will say the circumstances are not right. True again. And notice something. This one has been available to you every single year, in good years and bad. A reason that survives every possible condition is not a reason. It is a fixture. It came with the building. So all four are true. Now look at what they share, because that is where the answer is. Every one of them moves the decision into the future and hands it to somebody else, a future you, a readier, clearer, better resourced version who will be in a position to do this properly. You have not been postponing your life. You have been delegating it to a person who does not exist, and who has never, in 9 years, attended a single meeting. And underneath all four is the one you do not say out loud. You are not afraid of choosing wrong. You are afraid of choosing right, doing the work, arriving, and finding that the real thing is a normal size. And it will be, that is not a fear, it is a fact. Every actual thing is smaller than a possible thing because actual things have edges. That is what makes them actual. The possible ones are enormous precisely because nothing has ever been allowed to touch them. The advice everybody gives here is, just commit to something. Pick a lane, start. It does not work, it has not worked for you. And the reason is not that you are weak, it is that the advice has misdescribed the transaction. You are not being asked to choose between options. You have never been choosing between options. You are being asked to choose between being someone and being everyone. And being everyone has been quietly, for most of your adult life, the basis of what you think you are worth. So the first move is not choosing. The first move is grief. You are going to have to bury people, the musician, the one who moved abroad at 26, the one who started 10 years earlier and is by now very good at it. They are not options you are declining. They are people, they have lived in you, and they were the best behaved people you have ever known, because not one of them ever had to do anything. And here is the part that makes it survivable. The grief is the proof they were real. You cannot mourn something you never had. That laying them down hurts is not evidence you are choosing wrong. It is evidence they were genuinely yours, genuinely possible, genuinely alive in you. That ache is a receipt. And after the burial, von Franz is clear about what comes next, and it is the least inspiring sentence in the entire subject. My experience also has been that if a man pulls out of this kind of youthful neurosis, then it is through work. Not passion, not clarity, not the right opportunity. Finally arriving, work. And she is precise about which kind because she knows which kind you can already do. What the puer cannot manage, she says, is to work on a dreary, rainy morning when work is boring and one has to kick oneself into it. Anyone can work when it is thrilling. That was never the test. And there is a reason it has to be work and not insight. Including this insight, including this whole video. Work is the only thing that converts possibility into actuality, and that conversion is the entire disease. Insight does not perform it. Insight leaves you standing in the same room, holding a much better description of the room. The provisional life cannot be thought out of. Thinking is where it lives. So the obvious ending is, kill the eternal child. Grow up. Put it away. Jung refuses flatly, and the sentence he refuses it in is one of the strangest he ever wrote. The eternal child in man is an indescribable experience, an incongruity, a handicap, and a divine prerogative, an imponderable that determines the ultimate worth or worthlessness of a personality. Look at what he does there, a handicap and a divine prerogative, in the same breath with a comma between them, and he will not let you file it under either one. Then the end of it. It determines the ultimate worth or worthlessness of a personality. The same faculty, both outcomes. It is not that some people are cursed with this and others are not. It is that the thing which can make a life worth something is the identical thing that can make it worth nothing, and the only variable is whether it ever touches ground. So the eternal child is not your enemy. It is the only part of you that can still imagine anything. Everything you have ever wanted came from it. The instruction was never to kill it. The instruction is to stop letting it drive. Now the corridor. You have stood in a hallway for about 9 years, with every door held slightly open, and you have called that freedom, and you have wondered the whole time why you could never get comfortable in it. Here is why. A door held open is not an option, it is a draft. That is what has been wrong with the room. Nothing with that many openings can hold heat. It was never cold in there because something was missing. It was cold because everything was still possible. Close one, the room does not get smaller. It gets warm. Your real life is not going to start. It started a long time ago, and you have been running it as a rehearsal, taking notes, waiting for the night the audience comes. Nobody is going to hand you a life. You're going to have to pick one up. And it will be heavier than any of the ones you have been imagining. Because the ones you have been imagining do not weigh anything at all. Pick something up.